When I told my husband that my friends were more important than him, I never thought it would come to this me, sitting alone in this cold, empty apartment, staring at the silence that fills the space where laughter and love once lived. I was so sure I was right at the time, so convinced that my friends, who had been there for me in every chapter of my life, deserved a higher place in my heart than the man who vowed to love me through thick and thin. It felt empowering, almost like a declaration of independence. But now, as I try to piece together the fragments of my life, I realize that my arrogance, my refusal to see things from his perspective, has left me with nothing but regrets and the haunting knowledge that I might have lost the best thing that ever happened to me. I look back on those nights out with friends, those innocent gatherings, the laughter, the endless stories we told. My husband at the time wasn't always a part of those nights. I justified it by telling myself that he didn't understand me the way my friends did. He wasn't the one who had been there when I went through the toughest moments of my life. He wasn't the one who saw the real me, the girl who needed constant validation, affection, and approval from everyone else but him. I told myself that my friendships were more genuine, that they required less work, less compromise. I said my friends were my family, my true support system, and that my husband could wait. He didn't push back, not at first. He stayed quiet, always smiling and telling me he understood. But deep down, I knew that what I was doing was wrong. Still, I didn't listen to that voice after all. How could I, when I had everyone else telling me how right I was? My friends told me that it was okay to put myself first, that relationships could sometimes be suffocating, that I needed time for myself, that my husband should understand. They painted this picture of the perfect life where a woman could balance it all: her husband, her career, her friends, without ever losing her sense of self. I wanted to believe them, to feel validated in my choices, but what they didn't tell me was that my husband, the man who once adored me, was slowly withering in the background. They didn't warn me that by elevating my friends I was erasing him. I thought I could keep both worlds running and parallel: me husband and I in one lane, my friends and I in another. But love doesn't work that way. Not real love. There was this one evening, about 3 months before everything fell apart, when I came home late from a girls' night out. My husband was sitting on the couch, waiting for me with a tired, weary expression on his face. It was clear he hadn't been sleeping well. I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer at first. His silence screamed at me louder than any words could. Finally, he said something that I still remember as if it happened yesterday. "You told me your friends were more important than me. I'm just trying to understand what I did wrong." That question hit me like a ton of bricks. I wanted to tell him that he hadn't done anything wrong, that it was just the way I had always been, that I was just trying to keep things balanced. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, all I could do was stand there and watch the man I loved slowly break down in front of me. That night, he didn't say much else. He just went to bed early, and I followed, hoping that tomorrow would be different, that I could fix everything with one apology. But I was too proud, too consumed by my need to be right, to realize that the damage was already done. A few weeks later, he started pulling away more and more. He stopped making an effort to plan anything with me. He wasn't interested in our usual weekend routines. He didn't even seem to care when I went out with my friends anymore. At first, I assumed he was just in a phase. Maybe he was stressed with work. Maybe he just needed space. But the truth was, I had pushed him away so far that the space between us was no longer just physical. It was emotional. It was like I had built a wall, and every time I put my friends first, I added another brick to that wall. And as I watched him withdraw, I realized too late that the one person I had always counted on was slipping through my fingers one moment at a time. The turning point came when I came home one evening to find that he had packed his bags. I could see it in his eyes. This was the end. I asked him why, and he looked at me one last time before responding, "I love you, but I can't keep being invisible to you. You've made it clear that I'm not enough, that I don't matter as much as they do. I deserve someone who puts me first. Someone who chooses me, not just when it's convenient or when it fits into their schedule." He walked out that night, and the door slammed behind him in a way that echoed through my soul. The days after that were the hardest I've ever lived through. I stayed in the apartment, surrounded by reminders of everything I had taken for granted. I tried calling him, texting him, apologizing over and over, but it was too late. He had already made his choice. He had already seen that my friends had become more of a priority than he ever was, and that realization had hurt him in ways that no apology could fix. The texts went unanswered. The calls went straight to voicemail. Slowly, I began to accept that the life we had built was now a memory. I was no longer his wife. I was just a woman who had lost the love of her life because she couldn't see how much she was truly valued. Now, I sit in the silence that I once feared, but it's not the kind of silence that allows for reflection or peace. It's the kind of silence that forces you to confront your own mistakes, the kind that feels like a suffocating weight on your chest. The realization that I no longer have the friends or the husband I once cherished is like a constant ache, a reminder that I can't take people for granted. I had thought I was strong, independent, and in control. I had believed that I could have everything I wanted all at once without considering the cost. But now, the truth is unavoidable. I lost everything. If you're reading this, take it as a warning. Relationships require effort. They require understanding, sacrifice, and most importantly, they require you to prioritize the ones you love. If you want to build a life with someone, you need to make them a part of your world. You can't just keep them around when it's convenient or when it fits into your plans. People need to feel important, needed, and loved. No one wants to be a second choice or an afterthought. I wish I had known this before it was too late. I wish I hadn't pushed away the one person who loved me unconditionally, the one person who was always there for me, the one person I thought would never leave. But now I'm left with the aftermath of my decisions, and I am forced to live with the consequences of my pride. So, now I sit here, alone, with nothing but memories of what could have been. And in those memories, I hear his voice, and I wish I had chosen him first. I wish I hadn't let my friends take up all the space in my heart. But those wishes are hollow now, because the only thing left to do is learn from my mistakes. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Never take the people who love you for granted, because one day, they might just walk away. And when they do, you'll be left with nothing but the realization that you pushed them too far away to ever come back.